Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are here with the fantastic Dr. Patricia Papernow. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. Dr. Papernow is an internationally recognized expert on step families. She integrates a deep understanding of the research with 4 decades of clinical practice and a wide variety of clinical modalities, including psychoeducational, systemic, and trauma-informed. The recipient of the Award for Distinguished Contribution to Family Psychology from the APA Couple and Family Division, Dr. Papernow is the author of one of the classic books in the field, Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships, What Works and What Doesn't, and with Karen Bonnell, the Step Family Handbook, From Dating to Getting Serious to Forming a Blended Family, as well as dozens of articles and book chapters. Dr. Papernow is a psychologist in private practice in Hudson, Mass, and director of the Institute for Step Family Education. We are so excited to speak with you. Clearly, without a doubt, you are an expert in this field, and it's such a pleasure to get to pick your brain and have you share your wisdom with us. But I would love, before we begin and dig into a bunch of questions I have for you to share your personal journey and maybe an aha moment that brought you to this work.
Sure. I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad for this information to be in the hands of people who can use it.
Mm-hmm.
I got into this because my first marriage, I married a guy with 2 daughters, 5 and 9 when I met them. And a couple years later, I needed a dissertation. I was allowed to write what's called a qualitative dissertation, meaning talking to people rather than counting numbers. And I could see that my step family was changing. My stepkids were now 7 and 8. And 11 and 12, and there was some of the kids were changing, but something in the family system was changing. And so I wrote my dissertation on stages of development in step family relationships, looking at how do step families change over time and what are the different patterns of how step families change over time. And I got hooked. I finished my dissertation in 1980. This is a few years later, I got hooked. And everything then I learned after that, I learned lots of different clinical models since then. I've folded into this work and I'm still learning because there's still so much to learn.
That's so fantastic. And it's so needed. And I mean, of course, I'm a step parent myself, so I can fully relate to everything you've just mentioned in an overarching way about the experience of being a part of a blended family. I would love to begin with hearing your thoughts on what is different about the step family versus the original family of origin, if you will.
I call it first-time family. Family of origin meaning the one you were born into.
Okay.
First-time family meaning a family where both parents are the parents of the kid. And so that's the difference, and it is a fundamental difference.
Mm-hmm.
In a first-time family, the couple has usually some time to make a relationship, to establish some trust, to enjoy each other without interruption, to get to know each other, to get to know even the things like, I hate how he loads the dishwasher, but that starts to become, kind of ordinary. To begin to develop some rhythms of being with each other. And in a first-time family, children enter the adults' established relationship, and they enter hardwired for attachment to both of their parents. And both adults are pretty much hardwired for attachment to a child. And the other thing that happens is that over time, the family starts to develop ways of doing things, rhythms of being together. And the next child and the next, if there are more, are born into that already established adult relationship, but also the family network of, we like this kind of ice cream, we like to go to this kind of place, we go here in the summer. We eat grape nuts. Those things develop over time.
Yeah.
In a step family, the pre-existing relationship is between the parent and his or her child or children, and also between the parent and the children's other parent. The step parent enters as an outsider to all of that.
Mm.
The children's attachment is to their parents, not to their step parent. And even though step couples are often very much in love, the shared rhythms, the shared understanding of, what's an appropriate cost of a pair of sneakers, or in my family, is grape nuts a form of cardboard or a breakfast cereal? In my family, it was a breakfast cereal. My daughter and I married into a family where my daughter opened the cabinet door of the pantry in my husband's house the first time we went over there, floor to ceiling sugar cereal. Every sugar cereal you've ever thought of, and her eyes got as big as saucers. So we're not going to ask his kids to eat grape nuts. Are you out of your mind? And I want my kid to eat grape nuts. So there's that difference right away. They've all grown up one way. My daughter's grown up another way.
Yeah.
So that not only the attachment, but also the shared rhythms of how we do things are shared between parents and children, not in the new step couple and not between step parents and step kids. And that's a very different start.
Yeah. And I'd love to ask you further then, since we're kind of starting at the beginning of this journey, you talk in your book about the cycle for establishing kind of building that new connection, establishing these new rhythms, and these new relationships. And I would love for you to share, a bit about that, because I think it's fascinating. And even, it's obviously difficult to assign a time frame for every single situation, but I know that there's kind of some of that you've also noticed in your work that exists as part of that cycle. Could you just elaborate on that and share that, please?
Well, I think the first thing is that language blended reflects the longing. We want a family where we're all connected to each other. It's not reflect the reality. And you'll notice that in the Step Family Handbook, blended is in quotes because blended is the language that we use. We all use it, but it is not the reality. It's in the best of all cases, it's a several-year process.
Yes.
And there are some major challenges that make it difficult, that make it very different. So for instance, remember I said that in a first-time family, usually both parents are in love with the kid and the kid needs both parents. In a step family, the parent is in love with the kid, step parent is not. And every time there's a child present, the attachment is between the parent and child, and the step parent is left out.
Yeah.
And being left out is painful. We're hardwired to feel good to expect people close to us to turn towards us. And when they turn away, it does not feel good. In a first-time family, I watch my daughter parent her little toddler, and she parents and her husband's thrilled. He parents and she's thrilled. In a family, if I'm going to take care of my kid, I have to turn away from you, my partner, my child. And if I want to turn towards my partner, when I turn towards my partner, especially for children over 8 or 9, I've turned away from them. So that I call that the insider-outsider challenge, that parents are left out over and over and over again, and parents are torn. If I turn to this one, that one that I care about is upset, and if I turn to this one, this is, both are really difficult. And part of what's hard is, it's one thing to empathize with each other when you're having the same experience, like, oh, it's cold. It is really different. Take a lot more skill and self-regulation to empathize with each other when we experience very differently. So when the step parent says, I felt really left out, the parent's like, huh? Not because they're an idiot, but because they have a totally different experience. And one of the things that successful step couples do is they manage to be curious about each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
They manage to be curious and develop some empathy for each other.
Yeah.
Some people are better at it than others.
Definitely. I can certainly 100% relate to how you're describing this. And I love how in the book you're so thoroughly kind of really painting the picture. And I think you're totally right. I think these experiences happen, but it really takes the ability and awareness and effort to step back and really sit down and notice all the nuances of what's going on for just in general, and then for each person individually. And then, who are they? What are they? What are their inherent needs? And then, therefore, what are their needs with regard to each other, and starting to blend those personalities and right and needs and relationships.
Well, I actually think one of the dilemmas, if you start trying to blend right away,
Yes.
you're actually going to be really frustrated. You'd be better off trying to, I call it both hold both. Can I, as the parent, understand or get curious and be a little less defensive when my partner says they felt left out when I was having time with my kid?
Mhm.
Can a step parent get curious about what it's like for me as the parent when she says I was left out? For me to set of, getting defensive to say, oh, huh, really?
Right, right.
It turns out, by the way, that successful step families and struggling step families face the same exact challenges.
Mm.
Step families have much better interpersonal skills being able to calm yourself and soothe yourself, take a breath when you're upset.
Mhm.
It's like being able to, John Gottman calls it, have a soft startup, to start with some kindness. Then why'd you do that? Just, gee, that was a little hard. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah.
Successful step couples have more skills, and they need them.
Curious, as you describe that, one question that pops up is, would you say it's equal parts of that curiosity and kind of self-regulation, as well as communication, or do either of those aspects
But
pop up?
they're totally related.
They are, yes,
Totally, really. You can't really communicate if you're
right,
tense or
absolutely.
totally flat. The
Mhm.
other thing that really helps is having a map.
Mm,
It really helps to know that if you are a step parent, you are going to be left out and you're not going to like it. And
right,
it really helps for parents to know that your partner, your kids may not really be too pleased about your partner, not because your partner's doing anything wrong,
right, right,
but because for kids,
yeah,
adults, a new couple is it's wonderful. It's a gift.
yeah,
Been alone for a while. They're thrilled. And
right.
oftentimes the couple wants to charge forward. Kids often experience a new couple as a loss.
Yeah, of course.
And that's hard for the adults to get sometimes.
Mhm.
My experience is grown-ups in love are just as besotted as any teen. And of course, now we have our cell phones.
Yeah,
Just as besotted. And if I'm in love with you, I'm going to turn towards you, and my kid is going to feel left out. There's a loss of parental attention when parents fall in love.
right. And I would imagine that, something I work around with my clients is this notion that, to some degree, when you're turning towards this new person, it's almost like a little bit of a rejection, because there's an acute awareness, like this person is here and my other parent isn't, right? And kids inherently always want that reunification and want to hold out hope for that. But at the very least, I mean, that's something that's come up for personally. We've had to talk a lot and explain extensively about that inclusion, almost creating space for that other parent to be around, and even though they're not physically present.
That is critical.
Mhm.
I talk about 5 challenges. The first is that insider outsider one that I talked about. The second is that kids feel differently about step families than adults do. Kids experience losses. They also experience a loyalty bind. If I start to care about my stepmother, I'm disloyal to my mother.
Yeah.
Parenting, which we're going to need to talk about, because tasks in a step family pretty routinely divide parents and step parents.
Yeah.
There's that thing we started off about, how do we become an us in presence of us and them,
Mhm.
racing either us or them. And what you're talking about right now is ex-spouse is another parent, at least one other parent,
Mhm.
is a permanent part of the family.
Yeah.
And how do you make it okay for kids
Yeah.
to love both of their parents? And in
Right.
fact, it's not divorce that is the most robust predictor of poor well-being in kids. It's parental tension and conflict, and not even high conflict,
Right.
moderate tension.
Yeah, exactly.
Non-divorce, non-clinical families are associated to poor academic achievement, lower immune functioning.
Mm.
Get what the other one is. I think it's attentional stuff, more attentional issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But I'm not sure I answered your question. I went off somewhere.
No, that's okay. I think we're just, we're just exploring, but I just so appreciate you, you sharing your thoughts. But I would love for you to delve into some of the things you mentioned. If you can, there's one specifically that I think you mentioned in the beginning that I would love for you to delve into, but I can't quite remember the wording of it. So I'm going to defer to you on that. I think it was, we were discussing the kind of primary core challenging aspects to name, and also
Mm,
to consider, handling during the process of uh, maybe the journey towards blending the family
mhm.
and the various members coming together. And so I would love for you to speak more to the piece about, you know, how to navigate that successfully for families, particularly around, the not physically present other parent, and specifically with regard to the children. If you could speak a little bit to like the critical things to absolutely not do.
Well, the first thing is that usually adult couples have to slow way down.
Mhm.
It's hard to do when you're in love. It's hard to do. So the Step Family Handbook, which is the latest book, the subtitle is From Dating to Getting Serious to Becoming a Blended Family,
Mhm.
does a really good job of laying out step by step by step. And if you can keep it more step by step,
Mhm.
it really helps. And if you can avoid all of a sudden announcing that there's this new person in your lives, kids, and she or he is moving in and we're getting married,
Right.
that's too much for kids.
Yeah.
Kids need to meet the person. They may need to have the person come over and then go home.
Mhm.
They may need to meet the person in a place like community picnic where it's not so intense.
Mhm.
And they can come and go. And kids need their parents to stay connected to kids when the new partner is present. Now, that's hard for the new partner if she or he doesn't have kids. But kids are going to have a much easier time if they feel like their parent remains connected to them. And the other thing that I say to couple is keep that physical expression low. Enjoy each other behind closed doors.
Right.
I mean, it's one of the gifts of good relationship.
Of course.
For kids, what adults often say is, I want them to see a positive, loving relationship. Well, that's lovely for you, but it doesn't actually land that way for kids.
Yeah.
For kids, it intensifies losses. It often intensifies their loyalty binds,
Mhm.
and it's too much change. So keep the physicality low in front of kids. Take it a step at a time, a step at a time. And if you have an ex-spouse who is having a really hard time, some of the kids are probably going to be in a deep loyalty bind.
Mhm.
Have an ex-spouse who's bad mouthing, who's saying to the kid, this is a terrible thing, either outwardly or is falling apart in some way.
Mhm.
That child, the child whose other parent is upset, is going to be in a deeper loyalty bind, and that child may need more time
Yeah.
than a child whose other parent is fairly supportive.
Yeah. What kind of advice could you give, or concrete steps that are critical for families to do in that situation? I mean, certainly, right? Like, um, I would hope it's not fairly common to know that, bad mouthing, ideally, a parent is never really the best thing to do, right? It's always best to kind of keep the adult stuff separate and then the things around children separate, and considering that this is really challenging for them and very confusing, and they're still oftentimes young enough that they don't have those advanced skills that we might have from all of our experience to be able to deal with these kinds of situations, because up until then their only frame of reference for what a family was their core family. So certainly that can be extremely painful and challenging for them. But I'm curious if what can the other parent do to help mitigate that, and to kind of help them on in the process of understanding that it's not so much a loss of the other parent, it's just
Well,
gaining
I think the first thing is to get, you mean a loss of the ex-spouse or a loss of me as your parent when I'm recoupling? Which loss are you talking about?
I think I'm hoping that the other parent would be able to help the child recognize that, yes, things have changed, but they're not losing the other parent that isn't physically there.
Uh-huh.
That they are gaining this just
Well,
additional.
I think the first thing is actually, rather than talk kids out of where they are,
Yeah, no,
by trying to get where they are.
yeah,
It can be a lot of feelings when a mom or a dad finds a new partner.
yeah, yeah.
It can be a lot of feelings. And sometimes that, let's say it's a dad who recouples. Sometimes that's hard for moms when dads recouple, and she'll be okay. She'll be okay. If you know mom is bad mouthing,
Mhm.
and your dad or stepmom, you can say to a kid, I know it's hard for mom. I know she says some bad things sometimes. That must put you in a bind.
Mm. So really to relate to
It's
how,
called a loyalty bind, to really say to help the kid rather than pull the other way.
yeah,
Bad. She says I'm bad. To help the child hold where she or he is. That's called a loyalty bind. When one parent gets upset with the other parent,
Mhm.
that's hard for kids.
Yeah.
And sometimes parents, that's hard for kids.
Mhm.
It's hard for you.
So what I'm hearing you say is really helping them to name exactly what's going on, and really having the empathy and compassion and language, um, and just sort of holding space for them to really feel their feelings. And I've also heard from what you were describing a few moments ago that really the key is to tune in. Where is the child at? How are they?
And you can make guesses.
Yeah,
Just check them out.
right.
A lot of kids, what happens for a lot of kids? A lot of kids, when mom or dad finds a new partner, they feel kind of left or
Yeah.
lost, lonely. Is that right for you? Or a lot of kids, if one parent finds a new partner, the other parent gets upset. And then they feel, it's called a loyalty bind. They feel kind of torn. Is that right?
Mhm, mhm.
Give kids a chance to say.
Yeah, yeah, just inviting lots of conversation for them to
Mhm.
be able to express and
And
feel
what's the
safe.
hardest thing about that? What's the easiest?
Mhm,
Mom and dad doing that's make it harder? What could mom
mhm.
do that makes it easier? Would
Yeah.
you like us to do more of or less of? To give kids a voice. And if kids don't have answers,
Mhm.
give them multiple choices.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to think up the multiple choice.
Right.
It'd be better if we talked more about this, we talk less about this, we have talked about the same.
Mhm.
There's better ones than that. That's the only one I can think of, right?
Yeah, no, I love that approach. I often encourage that with clients also. And it really just kind of invites and sort of models a little bit for the child how they can start to think about this and what they can share, even if maybe the concrete details can be challenging, or they don't quite have the language for it, or even haven't fully identified it for themselves. That's fantastic. Um, I'm
I
wondering,
do need to say something about parenting because it's so important.
yes.
you asked about what are some of the, I call them easy wrong turns, big boo-boos.
Mhm.
Biggest boo-boo is the step parent expects to step in and share the parenting and share discipline.
Yeah.
And it's one of the mistakes that family therapists who don't know about step families make. They say you've got to be a united front and the parent backs up the step parent. Well, here's the research. The research is parents need to retain the disciplinary role.
Mm.
Kids, step parents need to, I call it, focus on connection, not correction. Focus on relationship building, not rules. Your job that until or unless children have a trusting, caring relationship with a step parent, parent needs to remain the disciplinarian.
Yes.
And if children are 8 and under, oftentimes step parents can move very slowly into being more of the limit setters. Kids who are older often are never really ready for the step parent to step in. Perfectly healthy step families, the parent remains the disciplinarian. Step parents have input.
Right.
And I can tell you that step parents all over the world want more limits and boundaries with their stepchildren, and parents all over the world want more love and understanding for their kids. I have not met a step couple that doesn't have this division, and I want all step couples to know this is normal. It's one of you is doing it wrong. It does turn out that what we know is the best parenting for children is called authoritative. Authoritative parenting is both loving, it's responsive, and it sets moderately firm limits that are appropriate and follows through. That's different than authoritarian, which is hard and firm, and I don't care how you feel, do it. And that's different from permissive. Oh, honey, whatever you want. It turns out that the easiest pull for step parents is authoritarian parenting, because step kids can be irritating. You know, they're not paying any attention to you. They're doing things that, you know, like leaving cocoa spread all over the kitchen, which, you know, when I was a single parent, if my kid was going to make herself cocoa, fine with me if she left a mess. She did it herself. For my new partner, that could be very, very irritating. So step parents easily get pulled into authoritarian parenting of step kids. That turns out to be toxic.
Yeah. I can
all over the world. Even in cultures like Japanese culture that accepts and values authoritarian parenting, it is toxic to step parent, step child relationships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Parent has to remain the disciplinarian. Often the step parent can help the parent firm up, but parents are very sensitive parenting. So here's the skills again. You're going to need a soft startup step parent. If you say you are being a wimp and your kid is a lazy something or other because he never cleans up, I guarantee you're going to have a fight or somebody's going to withdraw.
Absolutely.
If you can say, gee, I know your kids are not used to cleaning up.
Right.
I'd love it if, I call it sentence stem. I'd love it if your kid, I think your kid could start cleaning up after herself when she makes cocoa. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that the conversations, and with my clients as well, that happen, you know, adults are adults and they can have those conversations calmly and politely and kindly and empathetic.
At least theoretically.
Theoretically.
Right.
But, you know, but like you said, away from the children without one getting pulled into that role, and just sort of start to explore, you know, what are some possibilities, what maybe could be beneficial to start shifting, and how to do it, and really like share your ideas, but get curious about the other person's ideas, and you can arrive collaboratively at what makes the most sense for the situation.
And if you can do that, and it does help to know that steps almost always are going to want firmer, and parents are almost always going to want softer, and that good parenting is actually a combination of both.
Right.
It does help to know that that's normal, because you may not actually agree.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
And the first goal may not be to come to agreement, but to influence each other a little bit.
Exactly right. It's starting the conversation. It's sort of like I think what you're alluding to is what I call like plant the seed, right? It's like there's
That's
no just
cool.
conversations, but like you're moving the needle forward and a little bit at a time because at least you're bringing up the possibility of something else, right? And
That's a great idea. I haven't thought about that. That's cool. I'm going to borrow that.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, please. But yeah, I find you right because that's what I find has happened a lot for in my personal experience in both ways. And it's pretty interesting. And I think too, as people, sometimes we just need to, with new ideas, kind of sit with it for a little bit before we can even embrace it, right? Like it's new and
That's well put. The change takes time.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a process, not an event.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And what's cool about that is once that starts to happen both ways, then it sort of creates that environment that you were alluding to about the curiosity and the starting to notice, right? And then suddenly you're
mm,
noticing other things about the kids and what they're doing. And because they're developing at such a rapid age a lot of the time that in various ways too, right? So it offers that opportunity to tune into those things as well, right? So yeah, and kind of giving them credit. for that.
right.
Sometimes it's easy to say, I find that oh, you're not ready for that, or you're only so such and such an age, but really it's not a linear process always, and development isn't exactly on target like that. It happens.
Right.
It happens. So
Goes in cycles.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more, if you could, the distinction between, so you said that step families or blended families that actually, if you could speak a little bit more to, I believe you've mentioned, so there's step families and there's blended families.
Same thing.
Oh, okay, never mind. Maybe I'm thinking
Same thing.
something
Blended
else.
families is, I mean, there are people who say blended families is when both kids, parents, both adults bring kids. A blended family in my world is
Mhm.
if one adult brings kids from a previous relationship, that is a step family or a blended family. They are the same thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And if you could just illuminate a little bit more the what the differences are in how step families who kind of continue the struggle or have more of a struggle versus the ones that have success. What is it that they do? Like, what are the concrete, most important pieces to focus on um, to bring about hopefully more success or at least more ease, right? Because it could be such a struggle sometimes for all of us. There's just so many priorities and stakeholders and things to juggle.
It's complicated. It's a
It's
complicated family
yeah.
form. Well, I would say, let me think about that. First of all, struggling step families tend to be more blaming of each other or withdrawing.
Mhm.
They tend to go in with less realistic picture of what it's going to be, and then they hold on to it tight,
Mhm.
straining to blend,
Okay.
straining to blend, and upset when not blending. So parent is upset, step parent does not treat my kid the same as she treats her kid.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
I love my kid.
You're right.
And I have 7 step grandchildren. I just had my first belly grandchild. My daughter had a baby. And
Mhm.
I tell you, I love my step grandkids.
Mhm.
My heart flies open to my own grandchild.
Mhm.
There are plenty of step parents who feel as loving of step grandchildren as they do of grandchildren, but it's pretty normal that stepchildren are just not as in love for lots of reasons. It's not my kid, and the kid may not be happy that I'm here, so the kid is away,
Yeah.
and my partner has to turn away to take care of that kid. And that kid does things that I, as step parent, find irritating that are normal for that kid. My daughter loved to stand in front of the refrigerator and eat. That was quite irritating to my husband.
Yeah.
I was fine with it. I was a single mom. I'm glad to have her stand in front of the refrigerator and figure out what to eat. You know? So there are a lot of reasons that step parents may just don't open in the same way, and kids don't. Really little ones do. So that's the first thing. If you're straining, if you're as a step parent feel like you're failing because you don't love your step kid the way that you love your own kid or the way you want to. And if you as a parent feel your partner is just not trying hard enough, that's going to be tougher.
Yeah. What do you suggest that they can do? Say they identify, okay, the alarm is going off. Yes, you've nailed it. This is what's going on. Is there something they can do in that moment?
I think just having things normalized can be very helpful. I just saw a couple last year I hadn't seen for 15 years. They came back for just a little help with, adult kids. Now the step kids are adults. Somebody was getting married and there were some glitches. And she said, she was a stepmom, you were so helpful. It was transformative. And I always want to know, well, what did I do? What was so helpful? And she said, insiders and outsiders, just know that I am an outsider and that my feeling left out is normal.
Yeah.
It is not a sign that something is wrong with me.
Right.
That can be very, very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, as a step parent, you're going to need more comfort from the parent because you're being pushed away all the time.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's like tending to your own needs is what I'm hearing you say, which is so absolutely true. And I think it's true for all of us, really, regardless of the situation, but particularly in these situations, because the home is usually our safe space. And when we come here, and
that's well put. And it's not safe for us.
It's not that it requires a lot more effort, a lot more like watching your every move and being careful, especially in those early stages. And and putting in more effort to really, either be mindful of your own actions or your own, what are you bringing to the table? How much tension is there? Like
and taking breaks, sometimes that's harder for parents. Parents say, but we're a family. I don't want you to go away when my kids are here. Well, yeah, but when your kids are here, the step parent is an outsider.
Right.
And first of all, hard for the step parent, and kids want time alone with their own parent.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we haven't talked about yet that successful step families do is they do spend time together to begin to make to begin to do fun things together, to begin to make some rituals and traditions. But my colleague Ron Deal says, you do not make a birthday tradition with one birthday.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Tradition. So step family traditions are brand new. Step families do need to do fun things together. However, and step families also need a one-to-one time.
Yes.
Every time the whole family is together, there's competition. Couple is close, the kids feel left out. If the parent is close to the kid, the step parent feels left out. And so the couple needs time without kids. The parent and child need time without step parents or step sibs. And the other thing is step parents and step children need some time alone together to do fun, low-key, shoulder-to-shoulder things. Because the parent is there, that relationship is so much stronger. It will always trump the step parent, step child relationship.
Yeah, you're so right. And it just gives them an opportunity to like learn more and like develop those bonds of their own unique thing and their own unique either interest or just what is it, like their own hobby or their own.
If you're lucky as a step parent, you've got some things that one or both some of your step kids are interested in that there's not another adult that does.
Yes.
A step parent loves to play soccer and neither parent is very athletic.
Right. Yeah.
Step parent loves to cook.
Yeah.
kid can cook with step parent. Now, if mom is also a good cook in the other household, that may be kind of competitive.
Right.
I want to find something else to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing you say is sort of like the STEM parent can just have an open mind and just choose something that there's an open window for, in a sense.
And part of it's called affinity building or affinity maintaining. And some kids will be more open than others.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens in struggling step families is when step parents are struggling, parents will say, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
It is. Some kids are going to be more open.
Yeah.
Young kids will be more open.
Yeah.
Boys are generally more open. Kids, and especially adolescent girls, the age my daughter was when I met my second husband, Lily, 13, the worst. I hadn't read that research yet, but I certainly lived it. That 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls have a really, really hard time when a parent recouples. So as a step parent, I say, look around, pick the easiest kid.
Yeah, that makes
Do some one-to-one things. And if you've got a tough kid, see if there's something you're interested in that you could get interested in. Well, she just plays on the computer. I don't know anything about computers. So see if she'll teach you something.
Yeah.
Teach grown-ups things. See if she'll teach you something.
That's so true.
Do such stuff. I'm an idiot. I don't know how to do this.
That's so true. That's absolutely such a wonderful, just getting curious and wanting to know, anything that they would be willing to share, essentially. Yeah, that's such a wonderful way in to start.
And if you can't get in, it's painful. And you may need to go get a hug.
Yeah.
Parent, it's not because your step parent isn't trying hard enough. Maybe that she or he needs to soften up a bit, but your kid is in a loyalty bond with her mother, and she's not interested in this stepmom. And this stepmom will keep trying, but she needs to come to you behind closed doors and get hugs, lots of hugs, because it's hard.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful thing to recognize. And you're so right that just naming these things and knowing that it is common, what I'm almost hearing through our conversation is that the blend in the blended family almost might not happen, right? It's so challenging. So it's just best to almost put that as, it would be nice, but not even making it a goalpost, because you're right, it can be so painful every time that things are either feeling like they're getting in the way or it's not moving in that direction.
If you're straining to blend, actually, one of the things that I say is a better metaphor than blending. Blending is like if you take frozen blueberries and frozen strawberries and you make a drink out of it, whip them together. Becoming a step family is much more like you have a group of Japanese and a group of Italians, and you're telling them to live closely together. And what does that mean? The Italians are outgoing and a bit of aggressive, and their energy is offensive to the Japanese. The Japanese are more controlled. They tend to avoid conflict. And the Italian says, that looks cold to me. So what does that mean about how things are going to unfold over time? One of the things I talk about is learning by goofing. You're going to learn by, stepmother puts colored lights on the tree and stepdaughter bursts into tears and runs upstairs. Stepmother could say stepdaughter ruined Christmas, or she could say, gee, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
What happened? Turns out the kids used to white lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one more change.
Right.
That change is hard for kids.
Right.
And so once you understand that, what do? Maybe half the tree is colored, half is white. You have a white tree and a colored tree. I mean, who knows what you're going to work out.
Right. It almost sounds to me, as you're describing that, for those kinds of things, right? Like certainly around holidays in particular, we want traditions, but even as you mentioned, having, I forget what you refer to it in your book, but it's like the thickening up the
thickening middle ground.
The middle ground. Thank you. I was going to say it's like the connector.
Right. That's exactly right. No,
yeah.
You got it right.
So, and I really love that concept, and I so agree. And in theory, it makes such perfect sense. So I absolutely love that you talk about it. But it almost seems like a great place to start is just to come clean slate to the child and say, hey, what would be a really cool brand new tradition or thing that you want to try to incorporate? And that way it's like there's none of the loyalty, like
And
I'm changing it, but
kids don't really know what a tradition is.
yeah.
I just gave a blurb for actually a rather good book about preparing. It's called Preparing to Blend. It's by Ron Deal, who a lot of his books, he's quite Christian and religious. And so some of the couple is special and comes first, bleeds through sometimes, but not in this book. And one of the things he said, if you ask a child, do you want a traditional or an untraditional wedding? A child doesn't know what a traditional wedding is.
Right.
But you could watch YouTube videos
Yeah.
of step family weddings and see what you like and you don't like.
Yeah.
And you could, and kids often don't know till, if this is learning by goofing, know what matters. In my first step family, my first husband had two kids. We had a child together and then we divorced, and I'm in my second marriage for 25 years. But in my first marriage, we had our first Christmas. I'm so happy we're having Christmas together.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway through, my stepdaughter bursts into tears and runs upstairs. And I knew enough to, it was disappointing, but I knew enough to go after her, and she's sobbing and sobbing. Pajamas. It turns out we're in our pajamas. Oh, no, we weren't in our pajamas. We were dressed. She was upset that Christmas happens in pajamas.
Oh.
Now, we didn't own a pair of pajamas, either of us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas happens in pajamas. What? She couldn't even have said that.
Yeah.
She saw us dressed fully.
Right.
So it's not easy to find language for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you can try something and you can say, let's all talk about what did you like best?
Yeah. I love the debrief.
What did you like less?
Yes.
What was funnest? What was hardest?
Mm-hmm.
More of? What should we do the same? And let's hear from everybody. We're not going to argue and try to agree. We're just going to hear from everybody.
Yeah, that's a really
that helps.
Absolutely. Almost like from the onset, be okay with making mistakes, like almost expect things are going to go wrong.
And mistakes are hard.
Yeah.
Goofing is hard. My stepdaughter runs upstairs in tears. I'm like,
Right.
so it's a spike of arousal.
Who wants to see that?
You have to expect a spike of arousal and then.
Right. Yeah.
And things do change over time. I mean, look, I always like to talk about the refrigerator in my house. Mm-hmm. My husband's last name is Goldberg. My daughter could go through the entire kitchen, actually, not just the refrigerator, and point to foods when we were first together. Papernow, Goldberg. So, of course, all the sugar cereals were Goldberg. Mm-hmm. All the whole wheat cereals were Papernow. In the refrigerator, mm-hmm. the whole milk was Goldberg. The mayonnaise was Goldberg. The red meat was Goldberg. The entire fruit and vegetable compartments were Papernow. The skim milk was Papernow. The chicken and the fish were Papernow. What else? Low-fat mayo, yogurt. Okay, that was year one. Mm-hmm. And about year 3 or 4, my husband and I joined Weight Watchers. Red meat has a lot of points. Mm-hmm. So he started to eat chicken. Mm-hmm. He would only eat fish fried. He started to drink skim milk. We're now year 25. If you look in our refrigerator, it has actually soy milk we both drink, no whole milk. There is only real mayonnaise. He still will not touch low-fat mayonnaise. It's not even mayonnaise in his world. There's chicken. I eat a little more red meat than I used to. Vegetable drawer, entirely Papernow. He still doesn't touch it. He was actually made to eat his vegetables completely. However, he eats a lot of fruit now. So the fruit is both of us. The skim milk is both of us, or soy milk.
I love that visual so much, Dr. Papernow. The way that, like, yeah, it's incremental change and it can get there, and just we don't have to, maybe some things, like you say, we'll never budge on or we'll never agree on, and that's okay and it's fine. And then other things can kind of flow the way that,
Come slowly. You
yeah,
know, if you go back to Japanese and Italian, we're not going to become a family by making everybody eat pasta with chopsticks.
right.
That's a backfire. How do we find a few things? How do we try out Japanese food? They try out Italian food. How do maybe we all like Indian food? I'm just making that up.
Right.
How do we find a few things we can do together? And how do we make room for us and them at the same time that we're making a we?
Yeah, I love that so much. Really powerful stuff. I really loved our conversation. I think there's been so many fantastic and really important nuggets here. And I just know that the audience will have gotten a lot out of it.
Oh, I'm
Where,
glad.
where can they and us keep up with everything you have going on?
Well, the first thing is that the two books are really, there's so much
Yeah.
junk out there. There are tons and tons of blogs and books and Twitter feeds full of advice, but they're mostly one person's experience. And a lot of it is pretty misleading and some of it is quite destructive. So my two books, Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships, and the newer one, the Step Family Handbook, are really evidence-based. The Step Family Handbook,
Mhm.
where the subtitle is From Dating to Becoming Serious to Forming a Blended Family, that starts much earlier and goes step by step. It was written for the public. There's a little less step family in it
Mhm.
and a more of step by step by step. A lot of good ex-spouse stuff in it, a
Mhm.
little less step parent in it.
That's okay.
Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships is entirely focused on step families. It was written for both clinicians and people in step families. It seems to be accessible to anybody, both step family members and clinicians.
Yeah.
Person who designed it laid it out beautifully.
Yeah, it really is. I've read it.
Isn't it designed well?
So well designed
It's
because it's
very
so
visually
overview.
accessible.
Yeah, and then it gives you even some literal visuals to reference. But I also love the multifaceted examples and the real, like it was just such aha moments of like, yes, I've been there. I know
I
exactly what that's
recognize
like.
this.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's so refreshing, and yes, such a weight off of, I would think anybody's shoulders to recognize, oh yeah, this is common.
That's
This is
me. I
okay.
can't tell you, people still say, oh, I just read your book. I wish I'd read it earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I
The
highly
other thing is some people don't like to read. I have a kid with language-based learning disabilities, so that's made me very sensitive. Just some people just don't like to read, find reading difficult.
Mhm.
Website, and you can find it just by Googling my name, Patricia Papernow. My website is stepfamilyrelationships.com.
Mhm.
There are radio interviews and videos on it.
Perfect.
And a lot of people like, there's an hour-long video that a lot of people have told me they really like, but there are videos of all different lengths. The
Mhm.
radio interviews are mostly a half hour. You can listen to them in your car,
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
them, as you're walking. So that if you don't like to read or you want to take something in another way, that's accessible. And also Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships is an audiobook now.
Oh, fantastic. Is it through Audible or?
I assume it's through Audible. I haven't tried.
Okay. No, but that's
It's
fantastic.
available on Amazon. It has to be on Audible, don't you think? I have to go
I would
look.
think so. Yeah.
I should go look.
Oh, fantastic. It was such a pleasure speaking to you. And we so appreciate all of your wisdom. And we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on more from you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for getting this information out. It really matters a lot to me for it to be in the hands of people who can use it to make their lives better.
Absolutely. Well, it was lovely. And we appreciate you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.